Hello and welcome to the Cloud Native Trainer. My name is Mike Kelly and today I'll be taking you through how to use Git command line with Microsoft Terminal and Visual Studio Code. If you like the video, please consider liking and subscribing to help me grow the channel and make more content like this. Now, let's get into it.
If you would like instructions on how to install Git, I've done another video on this process. Now let's get started. I'm going to open a Windows terminal session. One of the first things we're going to need is a folder to actually hold all of our Git repositories. So I'm going to create one of those now using the terminal and mkdir or make directory. And I'm just going to call my directory repos. Once we've got the repos folder, I'm going to need to change into it. So cd repos. Let's clear the screen so we can see a little bit better. So now we're in repos, we're going to use our first git command. This git command is git init, and git init initializes the current folder as a git repository. Also, if you provide a folder name to git init, it will create the folder for you and turn that into a git repository, which is what I'm about to do now. So I'll do git init, and the folder name for this example will be website 1. So I'm going to build a simple website. Let's hit enter, and we can see that we have initialized an empty git repository with a .git folder inside of our website 1 folder, and that .git folder is essentially our Git database which tracks all our changes. We can navigate into that directory, so let's cd into website 1, and this is where we see posh-git working. So posh-git is now reporting that we're on the master branch, and we can either use that name as our branch, or we might want to change that. So we can use our second git command, which is git branch, and I'm going to give it the name of the old branch, which is master, and the new name which I want to give it, which is main. Well, you can see it's renamed it from master to main, and now we can start adding files and making changes. I'm a strong believer that you learn best by doing. So for this Git example, what I'm proposing to do is we will create a very simple website which will show you the process of how to add files to Git, how to track the changes, what Git commands you would use on a daily basis to save and merge your work. So in this instance, let's add a file to our website. So if we want to do that on command line, we can do that with the PowerShell New-Item and just give it a name of index.html. And here again, we can see we've got posh-git in action. So it can tell us that we've got one change pending and it's not been committed. We can also get a lot of this information using the git status command, which is a command that you will use a lot. So we just type in git status. We can now see that we've got one untracked change. So what this means is Git has detected a file which is not a part of its database, and we can add this file to the database simply using git add. So if we do git add and then index.html, our file is now staged but not committed. And what staging a file is it's telling Git to track the file to make the changes, but it's not committing it to our branch history just yet. So it's an intermediate step before we would commit a change. And if we were happy with our change, we could simply do git commit, give it a message, so -m, open quotation marks, and then I could type something like initial commit. Hit enter. We can now see that there are no outstanding changes because posh-git is not reporting any. All of the information here has disappeared. And if we do git status, whereas before it was red, now it just says there's nothing to commit and the working tree is up to date. Okay, let's clear the screen up. So CLS will clear our terminal. Now, in the real world, we're not going to be adding files directly using the terminal or PowerShell. We're going to use an editor. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using Visual Studio Code. So the easiest way to open Visual Studio Code from the terminal, and specifically into the folder that we're working with, is to type the code command, space, and then dot to indicate the current directory, and hit enter. We'll then be asked if we want to trust the files in this folder. So yes, I trust myself. And we can see the index.html file that we created earlier. Also mentioned that there is a built-in terminal. So we come up to the top here, hit terminal, and new terminal. See, it's defaulted to a PowerShell terminal, and that means that even in Visual Studio Code, we also get the posh-git integration, which is nice. So next, let's start making some changes. So we added the index.html file before, but we didn't actually put any content in it. So if we type in HTML, let's use an emit abbreviation, HTML5, let's tab complete. That will give us the scaffolding that we need for a valid HTML document. See, here's the title and here's the body. So let's just do the age-old hello world. And then put a big header, H1, tab complete, hello world, and save. Now, if we come down to here and we type git status, we can see that we have a modified file, and now posh-git is telling us that we have a modified change. So, as we did before, we can do a git add. And before I entered the actual file name, but we don't actually need to do that. We can do git add and a dot, which will tell it to add everything in the current working directory. So let's do that. So that's now added it. So we do git status again. We can see we've now got a staged file. So our index file is modified, but it's now staged. It's not yet committed. So let's do a commit. We have a message, and I'll put second commit. And we do git status now. We can see that there is nothing to commit, and we have a working tree that is clean. Okay, we've seen how to do git commits, how to stage a file, how to then commit that file. But what if we staged a file and decided, hang on, I didn't actually mean that. I'm going to do something else. Let's add a change. Add a paragraph, add some text. Would help if I could type. Let's save that. So we've got a modified file here. We go to git status. We can see that it's been modified, but we haven't yet staged our file. So let's stage it. Let's do a git add. Just for a bit of variety, use the individual name. And now we can see that the file has been staged. So we go to git status. The file has been modified and staged, and it's ready to be committed. But if we don't want to commit the file, we can do a git reset and the name of the file. Hit enter, and you can see it's gone back to red instead of green in posh-git. And if we do git status, we can see that the changes aren't staged for commit, but there is it has detected that there is a modified file. So that's a very simple way of unstaging your files, and then you can make whatever changes you want and restage them at a later date. So you may be asking yourself, Mike, you've talked about staging and you need to stage before you commit. Do I need to really do a staged file every time? And the answer is no, you don't need to. You can skip that stage entirely and use the git commit command with the -a flag. So if we come down to the terminal, we can do git commit -a -m because we want to give it a message, and we're going to say commit without staging and hit enter. And then we do a git status. Our working tree is fully up to date and there's nothing to commit. So there we've essentially combined both the git add and the git commit into one command, which makes it that little bit quicker. So it is down to your personal preference whether or not you would like to stage your file changes before you then commit them. I prefer to stage everything first, but it's personal preference. Okay, we've made some changes now. You may be wondering, how do I know what I've actually committed to my branch? That's a good question, and Git's got you sorted. So there is something called the git log command, which will show you all the commits in the current branch's history. So if we go down to the terminal, let's first clear it to make some space, and then we can do a git log. And we expand it out, we can see all of our commits. So we've got the initial commit with the commit hash. There's the second commit, and then the commit without staging. And you can see up here, this is the head. So this is where we currently are in terms of the branch, as we're at the head of the main branch. And there is actually some advanced features in Git which allows you to go back to previous commits. So you can actually check out a previous commit using its shard code here, and that then puts you in a detached head mode, which basically moves this so you're viewing a previous commit, so you can see all of the history. And then when you finish, you can check out the SSH code for the latest commit and take yourself out of detached head mode and continue looking at things. Should you find yourself in the same state as I am here with the tildes and the end, you can get out of it and get back to the command prompt by using :WQ, which will save and exit. Right, let's clear our screen up. Let's reduce this back to a more reasonable size. About there will do. Okay, so far we have been working directly on our main branch. Now this is typically called trunk-based development and is a great strategy if you're working on a team that's practicing continuous integration or you're just working by yourself. But in most cases, most development teams will be working using feature branches. And a feature branch is typically a short-lived branch which you create to track the work of a new feature. So if you're working on a website, maybe you want to change the homepage in some way, and we're going to do that using a feature branch. So let's make a start. Let's create a new branch. So if we go use the git branch command, we can then give it a new name. As I say, typically we have feature branches, and we can use feature / and then the name of our new feature. And let's call this new button, hit enter. So now we have created a branch, and if we just type git branch, we can list all of our branches, and the asterisk or the star denotes which branch we're currently on, which is main. Now to switch branches, it's as simple as typing in git checkout, and the name of the branch. So now we're on our new branch. We can see in posh-git, it's showing the new branch name, so feature/new button. So let's make a change. So let's add a button. Okay, save the file. We go to Git status, and we can see that we have a file that is not currently staged. So let's stage it by doing git add. Let's clear up our screen a bit. So we go to Git status. We can see that our file is modified and is ready to be committed. So now let's commit it with a message. Added the new button. Okay, so if we now do a git status, we can see there are no changes to commit. But what happens if we now switch to our main branch? So we can do that using git checkout and the name of the branch, so main. You can now see that as we've switched to our new branch, our change is actually missing. So what we want to do now is merge the change that we have in our feature branch into our main branch. And this is a process that you'll do when you're working with teams using the pull request mechanism and a remote repository like GitHub or Bitbucket. But just to keep it simple, we're going to do it on our machine to show you how that process works. So here we are on our main branch, and this is where we want our code to be merged. So the way git merge works is it takes our source branch and merges it into our current branch. So in this instance, merge. The command is simply git merge, and then the branch name, so feature, and it was new button. And if we hit enter, we can see that is fast forwarded, and we can now see our button has been merged into our branch. Okay, so following the merge, our new button will now be available to the rest of our team if we were working with other people and they had got all the changes from the main branch. Let's make another change. I'll show you a slightly different way to do the same thing. So we need to create another branch, and we also need to check it out. But there is a shorthand for this. If we do a git checkout -b and then the name of the branch, let's do input field. You can see that we have created the branch and also switched to it all in one command, which is a nicer way of doing the same things we did with git branch and then git checkout. So let's go in and add an input. Let's do uptype text. Let's find one down here. There we go. Use tab complete. Give it name, and we'll call it test input. That'll do. So let's do git commit -a-m as the other way of doing a commit without having to do the stage. Add an input. Now let's check out main. You can see our inputs now disappeared, and let's do another merge where we're going to merge our input field feature branch into our main branch. with git merge feature input field. And now everyone can see our brand new input field and our main branch is fully up to date.
For this next section, what we do is take a look at a remote Git repository and how we'd interact with that. In this example, we're going to use GitHub. Others are available, such as Bitbucket, but GitHub is by far the most popular. So let's start Chrome, Google GitHub, to the top link. Then we can either sign up for GitHub if you haven't already. So just type in your email address, start this process. I'm not going to, as I already have a GitHub account, so I'm just going to sign in. So if you bear with me one moment. Okay, so once you've either signed up or logged into GitHub, what we're going to do is create a new repository. So let's go over here. I'm going to be the owner. Just call it example1. That's available. And to make it a private repository, let's add a README, leave the license free. This is going to create a main as a default branch. I'm going to hit create repository. So now we have our repository. What we want to do is clone it so that we have it locally. So we come over to this code. You can see the option to clone. You can either use HTTPS, SSH, or the GitHub CLI. To keep things simple, we're just going to use HTTPS at this point. So let's copy the URL to clipboard. Let's go down to our terminal, open up a new session. We need to go into our repos directory, so cd repos. And then here we can do git clone and then paste in the URL. Then we hit enter. Tell us that our authentication has failed.
In the event that you get the failed authentication that I did, you can use the git config --global credential.helper manager, which will set up the Windows credential manager and allow us to sign in via our browser.
Okay, we've now changed it to use the Windows credential manager, which allows us to sign in with our browser. So let's click that button. It's opened a brand new window. I'll hit sign in. With the right password, obviously. Complete two-factor authentication. Now close the window. And our git clone has been done. So if we change into the repository, so we called it example, go to example1, do ls, see that the README that was present here is also present there. Okay, and if we launch code, as we've done before, yes, I trust the authors. You can see our example1 repository is present. If we start a new terminal session, again, we can see we're on the main branch. Okay, so we've cloned a brand new repository. But what do we do with the repository that we already had? Well, let's close out Visual Studio Code. Let's go back to our other example, website 1. Open Visual Studio Code.
Then we've got our index.html file, which has got some changes. Let's launch our terminal again. So what I'd like to do is create a remote. So let's go back to GitHub. And if we go back to our home, create a new repository. I'm going to call this website 1 to match what we've already got. It's going to be another private repository, and we're going to create it. And you can see here that helpfully we've got push an existing repository from the command line. So this is exactly what we need to do in order to link the code changes that we've already got to GitHub. So that uses the git remote add, and then here we've got the name of the repository. This is typically origin, but it could be anything you want. You could change that to GitHub if you really wanted to. Let's leave it as origin. So let's copy that, go back to our VS Code. Let's paste it in, hit enter. And our code should now be in GitHub. Simple as that. So we go back to website 1, refresh the page. We can see our index.html. So that's how we push up our existing code. We start with a local repository to GitHub. So we have to create a remote repository first, and then we create a link between our local repository and the remote. And in this instance, we've called it origin. Once we have that link in place, we can start making changes. So we could make a change directly on the main branch if we wanted to. So if we go in here, let's add some text. So another paragraph. Some more text. Shall we save that? And then what we want to do is state the content. So we can do git add, git commit, give a message, first change to push to GitHub, hit enter. And now if we do git push origin, our changes will have been pushed up to GitHub. So if we go back to the browser and refresh the page, we can see that our changes are now live in GitHub. And then if we had other developers that were working with us, they could pull those changes down. So let's simulate that. I can edit this directly in the browser. So I'm going to add another paragraph, more text, and then we're going to commit changes. And this is going to commit it directly onto the main branch. So now we have our remote origin is now got changes that our local file doesn't have. So we go back to VS Code. See, the changes aren't present, but if we do git pull on the main branch, because that's where we made the changes, you can see yet more text has appeared. And that is the basic workflow for working with a remote repository such as GitHub.